Maya, you like curating music playlists, is that right?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. I think I need your help there. At least my daughter would say that I need your help for sure. Welcome, everyone, to the June 2025 edition of The Impact, a sustainable CT podcast. For your edification, your enlightenment, and your entertainment, too. I'm Jim Hunt, Communications Director at Sustainable CT. So if you're looking for someone to blame for this podcast, well, you can blame me. But remember, this is never a one-way conversation. We always want to hear from you for our edification and enlightenment. Drop us a note, won't you? To info@sustainablect.org. The Impact is brought to you in part by the Connecticut Green Bank. The Connecticut Green Bank confronts climate change by increasing and accelerating investment into Connecticut's green economy to create more resilient, healthier, and equitable communities, and we are oh so glad they do. Visit them at ctgreenbank.com. Remember, we can't do what we do without you, and you can be a Sustainable CT sponsor. Yes, you can. Find out how at sustainablect.org. We have three guests with us today, and this is great because they are three of our brand new Sustainable CT Fellows. We'll be chatting with Anna Hilary, Maya Aviles, and Thomas Busemeyer. Anna is a rising sophomore at the University of Connecticut. Go Huskies. She is majoring in environmental sciences and minoring in urban and community studies. She'll be working at the Northeastern Connecticut Council of Governments in Dayville. In her free time, Anna likes pole vaulting. Heck yeah. Okay. Pole vaulting. Let's ask about that. Maya is a rising senior at Columbia University. Go Rory the Lion, right? As we're Rory the Lion. There's something about a goat in the history there, and I don't know exactly what that is. There was a goat mascot for a while. Anyway, it's Rory the Lion. Studying sustainable development. She is the 2025-2026 Columbia Chapter Director of Sprout Up, an environmental volunteers organization providing environmental education to public school children. It's very cool. This summer, Maya is working with the Western Connecticut Council of Governments, WestCOG, in Sandy Hook. Maya, you like curating music playlists, is that right? That's what you're
Correct. Yeah, I love it.
Okay. I think I need your help there. At least my daughter would say that I need your help for sure. Yeah. And speaking of music, we also have Thomas Busemeyer with us. Thomas plays guitar in a band, and they call themselves Ruby Left Step. We'll have to ask about that name, where that came from at some point. Thomas also happens to be a 2025 graduate of the University of Connecticut, go Huskies, with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and a minor in Environmental Studies. He attended Northwestern Connecticut Community College as well, where he became involved with an on-campus sustainability initiative. This summer, Thomas is working with the Capital Region Council of Governments in Hartford. Welcome to all. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really do appreciate it. Now, before we get started, we need to remind podcast land of just what exactly a Sustainable CT Fellow is and why it matters. For those who may not know, Sustainable CT places highly qualified fellows across the state's councils of governments, or COGs, to help cities and towns become registered, certified, or recertified with Sustainable CT during the summer. The COGs, we should also remember, serve as Connecticut's regional planning organizations, much like counties do in most normal states. We have COGs. Fellows assist cities and towns within the various COG territories on researching and documenting their sustainability work. They support municipalities on sustainability initiatives and assist on COG projects that align with the Sustainable CT goals. Fellows also have the opportunity to work with one another on a group project addressing a statewide sustainability topic. We'll ask about that in a minute. I want to be sure to thank our funders, the sponsors of our fellowship program, because without them, trust me, this would not happen. The Northwest Connecticut Community Foundation, Hampshire Foundation, Connecticut Green Bank, Connecticut Community Foundation of Greater New Britain, and the Valley Community Foundation. Thank you, funders. So now that we have all that out of the way, let's hear from the fellows. Anna, let's begin with you because you're the youngest, I think. And I'm not picking on you because you're young, but just to point out that there's a wide range of ages in this program. Am I right? I mean, Thomas is a graduate. and you're a freshman, or you were a freshman. Now you're going to be.
Yes.
Tell us how you first became involved with sustainability issues. Was it in high school? I mean, it couldn't have been very long ago when you got involved in this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, honestly, like in high school, I knew that I really liked the environment and I wanted to do something like revolving around that. But I honestly didn't have too much time to do like a lot of extracurriculars, like revolving around it, just because I was doing track and that took up most of my time. So then I knew when I went to college, like I had all this free time and I applied for a job at the Office of Sustainability at UConn and I ended up getting it. And that's where I really was like introduced to like sustainability. In a more broad sense, because I always knew like sustainability, like, oh, like recycling, but never like the extent that I do now. But like, yeah, so then through like the UConn OS office, I definitely got my foot in the door with that. And then I joined like a research lab, not super focused on like environmental sustainability, but more of like looking at like environmental justice. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And that's what like Sustainable CT does. We do a lot of intersection between like and like the kind of like typical sustainability that you think of, and then also like environmental justice stuff. So
that's fascinating. I mean, sustainability, quote unquote, means so many things. At least to us, it does. We take a very broad view of what sustainability means. And you're right. When you're growing up, you think, oh, it's recycling, or it's maybe it's composting. I don't know. Even that people have a hard time connecting.
Yeah.
We think of sustainability as lots of different stuff, whether, it's equity work. What truly makes a town sustainable in every sense? And of course, it involves saving the planet, which is no small thing, but it also, it really involves a whole lot of other things. Thomas, tell me how did you get involved with sustainability, and what's your background? How did you end up here?
Yeah, well, so I graduated high school kind of in the midst of COVID-ish. It would have been 2021, so things were still kind of bouncing back. And I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life or anything. So I went to community college because it was free. The state had just made it brand spanking new program.
Yeah.
And while I was at community college, I got the opportunity to attend the Oxford Consortium for Human Rights, which is hosted at Oxford University over in England. And during the week that I was there, the topic of the conference was climate change. And I think climate change was always something I was vaguely aware of. I have an anxious mother who's been worrying about climate change since like the 80s. But it was a really, really incredible experience because all of a sudden I was surrounded by all these people who were so fiercely dedicated to fixing what I had always kind of thought was like this horrifying, insurmountable problem. And it's still horrifying, but being in a room like that made me feel like maybe it's not so insurmountable. So I got back to Connecticut and got involved with some sustainability initiatives on campus, just trying to kind of figure out where I could get involved. And then I transferred to UConn, and I'm not really a science person, so the policy was always more interesting to me, which is why I took the political science route. My dad is a journalist, so I've always kind of been like a government thing, like kind of in my orbit a little bit. And so, yeah, broad strokes, I guess that's kind of how I ended up here.
Yeah. I mean, the policy side of it is incredibly important. And because I'm not a science guy either, the people who work the program of Sustainable CT are so talented. They know all the facts and all the figures and all the statistics. I'm the communications guy, so I have to know a little bit about a whole lot of things. And it has always struck me that I think you said something very interesting. Is it insurmountable? It still strikes me as being very scary and perhaps insurmountable, but we're going to do our best nonetheless, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah. When I was your age, and that was a long time ago, granted, we didn't. The consciousness of all of this was so limited. I mean, it really was. It wasn't until the 70s really that people really started looking at the environment and taking these things seriously. and even then we had to unlearn a lot and then relearn a lot more. And what heartens me is that, sound like an old dude here, but your generation, my kids, are really coming up to this. You've lived it now your entire lives. You've seen this going on. There is a crisis. You know this is happening, so it isn't something that you have to be taught, which is very, very important and special, I think, and that gives me a little hope. It's like if it was a bunch of old dudes sitting in the room, we'd be in trouble. But it really is the fact that my kids and their peers and your generation are really coming to this with a sense of urgency. That's helped. That's something positive for me. Maya, give me your background. How did you get into this?
Yeah, so my introduction to sustainability and environmentalism was in high school. I took AP Environmental Science, and I was really interested in the science aspect.
They didn't have that when I was a kid. They did. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That kind of thing. We didn't have that. But all right, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah. There was one unit in it that talked about like the urban heat island effect and how people in cities are more affected by climate change, and that kind of clicked with me because I moved around a lot as a kid, and I had like been in cities, I've been in the rural areas, and I've seen those kind of discrepancies between how different neighborhoods and communities are treated, and that kind of sparked something in me. So I started a club the following year after taking AP Environmental Science called Acts for Earth, and that was just to educate teens and young adults on sustainability and environmental justice, mainly because a lot of people don't know about environmental justice or sustainability as something that's going on. People are mostly focused on like climate change and like climate denial and all of that. So I kind of wanted to educate people on that. And then going into college, I knew I wanted to do something environmental, but the school I was going to was just focused on the science aspect and not on the people. So I transferred to Columbia, and I'm now taking sustainable development that talks about like the people, the planet, and the profit, and how those are all aligned together. So yeah.
I'm going to jump ahead. I had a couple of questions, but you're making me think really, which is good. Thank you for that. Given the current political climate.
Oh no.
I mean, I'm trying to be diplomatic. Given the current political climate and the state of the Earth's climate, for that matter, are you optimistic, or is there a certain pessimism or a mixed bag? What's your outlook for the future?
There's always going to be a little pessimism in me. I'm a very optimistic person. However, given the current political climate, it's very tricky to navigate currently. Yeah. And I feel like with such a divide currently, we're focusing on the wrong things that can't help us to move forward in sustainable development or in climate justice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I get disheartened when they have climate meetings in Dubai. It's like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with this picture. Just right off the get-go, with all sorts of legacy energy companies showing up and really taking over the agenda. It does make you feel like, all right, are we capable of doing this? What do you Anna, what do you think? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
I think it's definitely hard, like Maya was saying, to be optimistic sometimes, because like my mom works in the federal government, and a lot of even like working at Sustainability, we've seen like so many like the funds that are already pretty low for like environmental and sustainable initiatives are being just completely cut out, and people are losing their jobs. Like we've seen that with the national parks, and then especially my mom working in the federal government, and like she has a lot of stuff working with like DEI and stuff, and like literally all of the proposals, they have to like cut out anything involving like the environment, anything involving anything involving the environment or just sustainability. And it's really concerning, honestly, because I really felt like there kind of was like a shift towards like the environment. Like I feel like even like little small trends, like the plastic straws, like trying to convert away from those, like little small things that are starting to pick up in trends, even if they're kind of like a little joke to some people, it was like still gaining some traction. And I feel like now it's gaining kind of bad traction and is getting completely defunded, which is unfortunate. But I'm hopeful that I hope it doesn't get to this point, but that maybe like seeing some bad things, like even the forest fires, like in LA, like I hope those can kind of open people's eyes to the reality of the situations.
Thomas, you said, jump in here. What do you think about the future? You're looking forward to promised land, or are we in deep trouble?
Well, I think that I guess I toe the line a little bit. Broadly speaking, I am largely pessimistic. You mentioned having like the most recent COP in Azerbaijan or like in the UAE. That's horrifying, and I think speaks to some kind of really global systemic problems that we have that make it really difficult to combat, especially the largest problems. I think at a certain point, I kind of rolled over from pessimism into like fatalism, just as far as specifically like climate change goes. Like I said, I'm not a big science person, but from all the classes I've taken and all the people who are much more qualified than I am that I speak to, it's like we've kind of already made our bed as far as climate change goes. The climate is going to change. It's going to be a disaster. I think the best we can do at this point is mitigate the losses. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the part that I am optimistic about, because I think that, there's going to be a lot of suffering, but I think that there are a lot of people, usually on kind of a smaller scale on a local level, who are working very hard to mitigate that, to cut back on it as much as possible. And so that makes me optimistic. And that's something I like about like our program too, just even being here in like the CROG office. It's like there are a lot of people here that are working on kind of a smaller scale to make people's lives easier and protect people going forward. In maybe more modest ways, but I think ways that maybe matter more at the end of the day.
It's an interesting philosophical conundrum when you work in something like sustainable CT, where everything we do is such small ball. Everything is small ball. We're working on a compost pile in Preston, and a recycling operation in Hartford somewhere, and all of these things. All these tiny projects, and our mantra, of course, is that all by our collective action, these things make a big difference, and that is true, and that keeps me coming back. The other thing that keeps me coming back too is climate change is so overwhelming. Just the thought of it, right? Like you said, it's a worldwide problem. It's a global problem. So what we do, this compost pile in Preston isn't going to make a damn bit of difference, you'd say, right? I mean, of course not. It's not going to change the world. And people will throw up their hands and say, well, there's nothing I can do because it's worldwide. And I live here in Preston and there's nothing I can do. What am I going to do? What we bring to the community is say, no, there are things we can all do, and you can do these small things. And here's how we can get you involved in the bigger picture, in having an effect. And if enough people do this, it's going to be very meaningful. So it gives people a sense of agency that they might not otherwise have. Because I agree with you, a lot of the damage is done, and the future is going to require a great deal of mitigation, and how we handle that damage and how we are able to have some sense of resilience in what we do. Let's talk about the future and in a way that is a little different. I don't want to hear what you're looking forward to next year. I want to hear what you're looking forward to in the next 20 years. But let's take a break just a second. Think about that question. We'll be right back. We'll return to our program in just a moment. You've been listening to The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. Hey, if you're not yet a subscriber to Actions and Impact, the Sustainable CT newsletter, you could be missing out on some very important information to you, to your organization, and to your town. Accept no substitutes. Do yourself a favor and subscribe today, and you can do that where? At sustainablect.org, of course. And while you're out there tripping the web fantastic, don't forget to join us on Facebook for some fun and interesting stuff. Guaranteed safe for children and pets. Come on, be our friend, won't you? At facebook.com/sustainableCT. And yes, of course, we're LinkedIn. Search for Sustainable CT from your LinkedIn page, and you'll find us right there, being all LinkedIn and media social. And be sure to join our June coffee hour this month to hear from the co-founders of Team Westport. That's right. Team Westport's mission is to make the town of Westport more welcoming with respect to race, ethnicity, religion, and LGBTQIA+. TEAM stands for Together Effectively Achieving Multiculturalism. Yes, it does. And Team Westport has been in place for over 2 decades. Join us to learn about how they are building a more welcoming community. Register to share the Java where else at sustainablect.org. Note that this month's coffee hour will take place on a special date. That's right, June 26th. But it remains true that you can normally join Sustainable CT for virtual informal discussions most third Thursdays of each month. We share program updates and resources, explore your questions, and strengthen the network of Sustainable CT champions. Yes, we do. These sessions are free, and you know that free is good and open to all. Okay, let's get back to the program. Welcome back. You're listening to The Impact and a Sustainable CT podcast. And today we have our fellows, our brand new fellows that we have during the summer. And they're great. We're having a great conversation. And I want to ask about their thoughts about the future. I don't want to hear about just, what you think about the near future. I want us to be bold in our thought process here and maybe dreamers. You say, let's say it's 20 years from now. Where do you imagine yourself to be? And what do you imagine yourself doing, Anna? What about you?
I honestly am not 100% sure, but
that's okay. You don't need to be sure about a question like that.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah. If I was sure about it, that would be. I probably wouldn't be actually sure about it. I'd be fake. But
do you have like a dream, a thought about
Yeah.
If you could, you'd be doing something where? Doing what?
Yeah, no, definitely. I want to do something, I keep saying like involving the environment, but I think now kind of working with like getting more experiences like through college and stuff, definitely more like community service type acts. Yeah. Like I worked on this program like Give and Go, where we take a bunch of like used or unused like items from the dorm and then redistribute those to community partners around Connecticut. And like it really just felt very impactful. It was, you are able to fully see like people would come and pick up all their stuff, like especially like we had some like local churches come and pick up stuff for people in need of those items, and they were really, really grateful. And it was just like super like awesome to see like the impacts that like I was having, or like by helping collect all these items on other people. So definitely something involving that sector, or maybe more like field research. Yeah, I'm not too sure, but definitely something that helps people. Trying to find a way to connect. This is like the big kind of question that I'm trying to answer, or like problem that I'm having is like I really, really like ecology. So, and then I also kind of like urban planning, environmental justice policy. So finding a job that kind of is able to incorporate those together.
Sure. Okay, Maya, how about yourself? What do you think? What does the future hold?
I think so for me, I would love to be an environmental lawyer and defend our people and the planet. And for the future of the world, I guess, I look at a degrowth kind of method. And I would love globally for us to stop looking at the growth of GDP and start focusing on the well-being of the people. And
what a concept, huh?
I know. And just value our people and highlight those, dismantle these inequalities. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I love that idea. And it has been around for a little while. And trying to have it gain some traction has been really tough in a capitalist society. In a country like ours that is so rich, it has such abundance, with at the same time, though, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots is so great. On balance, against the rest of the world, if you look at all these other countries, their quality of life issues stack up against ours in so much better ways, so fundamentally, even though they're not as rich as we are. It's one of these things where you go, where is the concern? Where's the quality of life reflected in the statistics that you take, and how you're measuring success? And GDP it's not the right statistic to be using, I don't think. Thomas, what's your thought about in 20 years? Where do you think you'll end up doing? Any ideas?
Yeah, well, Maya kind of took the words out of my mouth. I'd also like to be an attorney at some point. I plan on doing law school in like a year or two.
Yeah.
And it's cool. The degrowth mention is cool as well. I recently read Less is More by Jason Hickel, which is a really interesting book about degrowth. I guess in my loftiest kind of aspirations, I'd like to help lay some, and this is kind of an ongoing project, but I think it will be ongoing for a lot longer. I'd like to help lay some jurisprudential groundwork to establish some legal rights for the natural world itself. There are a couple like kind of like youth-led sort of lawsuits that are going on that are kind of angling at this currently. And I have a personal conviction that I think it's an important idea. You know, the natural world, I think, has intrinsic value beyond being just a resource that we can like exploit. And I'd like to see that reflected in our legal understanding.
Yeah. Wow, and I would love to see it. And maybe I'm showing the skepticism born of age. When it's hard enough to defend human rights, the concept of having due process and having a legal system that is functional, even here in the United States, I never thought I would ever say this, is so threatened that they take the next step of saying, all right, how can we expand those rights? How can we expand our rights to the environment? No doubt important. Let me go back to Anna. Let's ask you if you don't mind. Is there a single issue that means more to you than most others? I mean, and it doesn't have to be about sustainability necessarily. It could be anything that you find really important in your walking through the world. But is there anything you care most about besides your family? What would it be?
I think, like, I guess this is kind of sustainability related, but I definitely, working with the Give and Go project I was talking about before, like waste management, and just seeing the amount of things that would have gone to like the trash or like the incinerator was insane. We had like 9,500 pounds worth of trash just from 3 days of collection, and half the stuff wasn't even like given to the program. It was just thrown away too. Like we missed a lot of stuff because there was like 2 days that it was raining. It was just really insane to see. And so I think like just being able to see that like really like has kind of fueled something in me, because like I got home then from college and like the amount of stuff I had in my room was so disgusting, and I was like oh, like I was just like so disgusted with like the overconsumption. And it's kind of like, it's weird because like my sister also, like she's pretty little, she's like 11 years old, and so she hasn't really gotten too much exposure like this like at all. And like even I didn't have it before like this year, but like she has all these like perfume bottles with like different scents of the same exact brand, like the Sol de Janeiro, and she has to like keep collecting them all. And I was like, what do you need this for? So I think like this has been an issue that I've just been like very aware of recently, just like the amount of stuff that people have. And it's kind of like a trend to keep like building up these collections, and it's like it's crazy that people feel the need to have all of this stuff when there's so many people that don't have like anything.
Yeah.
Or they just have such limited things, and it's because of like just the consumerism, like buy, like keep buying. Yeah. So.
We throw away an amazing array of crap. I mean, the consumption is just mind-boggling, and I see it not only in my family and my own life, and I'm conscious of it. Think about people who aren't. It's just walking through their days, just going about their business. And I try to minimize it, but it's just astonishing. Maya, how about you? What if there was an issue that you cared most deeply about? And I think you touched on it earlier, but let's just be specific. What would it be that really means the most to you?
Yeah, so on a broad scale, environmental justice, but narrowing that down, it would be how communities of color are impacted by water pollution, air pollution, all of that. Especially, I really started my environmental interest journey focusing on like how redlining has evolved to put communities of color next to hazardous waste and all of that. So I really want to focus on dismantling that and fighting against it.
Yeah. Now, have you experienced that yourself, or in your neighborhood, or when you with your peers or family in some way that gives you real life experience in that regard?
I've definitely experienced moving around a lot and moving from like low income areas to high income areas, and seeing how living in the low income areas there was more trash. The local city didn't focus on trash pickup in the low income areas, and I was just like, what is going on? Hello.
Yeah.
So that really opened my eyes, and that's what I want to focus on. I want to make sure everybody has a healthy environment, because everybody should have a healthy environment.
Yeah. I mean, or in the low income neighborhoods, it just happens to be where they put the power plant, or it just happens to be where they're going to run the interstate through. Yeah, I've lived that experience. I grew up in New Jersey. I don't admit that to too many people, but I grew up in New Jersey. And again, the disparity between the neighborhoods, the haves and the have-nots, was very stark. And the poor neighborhoods, of which I was one for a considerable portion of my time there, really took the brunt of whatever decision-making, whether it was local, state, or federal, how the land was being used, what was being preserved and what was not. We had a lake behind our house that could have been a beautiful preserved lake, body of water, a natural body of water. It just turned into a cesspool. And the other areas in the community, in the high rent districts, everything was pristine, everything was well preserved. All the stuff was quite obvious what was going on. And that is a struggle that continues. It is not something that has been overcome at all. Thomas, what do you think? Besides giving standing to trees, which is great, I want to see that happen. Is there anything else in your experience or in your concept? Again, it doesn't have to be sustainability necessarily, but what is an issue that is truly important to you personally, and you hope to be able to pursue in your life?
I think freedom of speech, freedom of expression.
Bravo, buddy.
Yeah, right. Like I mentioned, my father's a journalist, and he always worked in print media, so he's not, one of those TV people or anything.
I like him already.
Right. Yeah. And so growing up in my house, the rule was like, if you can read a book, then you can read it. Like if you have the ability to physically read a book, then you can read whatever you want to read. And I think that that's, kind of an important thing. Generally speaking, everybody should be able to access whatever information they want. And of course, I mean, it ties into sustainability, because it's like, how else are we going to think about new solutions to these kinds of problems if we can't have access to all of that, and if we can't say whatever we want about all sorts of things, and also being in a band, being a musician, like I want to know that I can do artistically, creatively what I want to do, what I think the moment calls for. And obviously that's becoming increasingly contentious, I guess, in America, which is a bit of a strange feeling.
Yeah. And it is contentious in a very awkward way. I've always been I'm a writer, I'm a free speech champion. And to see the right co-opt that issue really, really pisses me off. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not okay. And I've also been in my fair share of demonstrations, and I don't think even when I was younger and in some pretty wild demonstrations, I had quite the fear that people do today of the National Guard showing up and having the Marines come in behind them. It's just a really scary time we're in. You hit something on the head, though, too, because there are certain basic concerns that without which, if we don't have free speech, if we don't have a democratic society, if we don't have an equitable society, all the other things are going to go to shit, right? You can't fix the problems that you face unless you have certain basics guaranteed or pinned down, or you have certain the rule of law, you have freedom of speech, you have participatory democracy. You got to have these things, otherwise nothing else is really going to work very well. Yeah, I got off on a tangent. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. Let's get back to sustainable CT for just a moment, because we're going to run out of time and be going on and on. You folks are going to be working on a summer project together as a group. Has Dorothy, and I want to say Dorothy is our fabulous what is she? She's your leader, mentor, facilitator. She's great. She's going to be able to get you guys learning a lot this summer, which really in the end is the important part. Has she talked to you at all about the project you're going to be doing together this summer?
Yeah, so we haven't done too much yet with it. We had like a general kind of information meeting about it,
Okay.
but it's looking at noise pollution. And just because it's a kind of very like understudied area right now,
Yeah.
so we're going to be looking at a lot of like town ordinances, seeing if even if those towns have an ordinance, someone wants to add on to that. But that's what the general kind of idea I've gotten so far.
Yeah. That is a fascinating topic. And again, not without controversy, because when in the old days, when I grew up, the town municipalities used noise ordinances to essentially control people. There was an element of controlling people so that, again, controlling that freedom of expression. There's a line that and it gets thinner in certain respects. Is it noise pollution or is it noise control? And what are the differences between the two, and how are municipalities using them? So it was just another way of keeping the riffraff out of town, or controlling the riffraff, as it were. And I think the whole idea of noise pollution is certainly a valid one, an important one, and understudied. But I think what you guys should really try to look into this summer, if I can throw my 2 cents in and give you some advice, try to figure out if they're using these ordinances to control, or how they're using them, why they're using them, why they're on the books, not just whether or not they happen to be on the books. How are they being used? How are they being employed? That's kind of important. And it'd be interesting to see what the results are. So I'm certainly looking forward to that. Anybody else have any thoughts on that, Maya?
Yeah, I'm really interested. I've not really looked into noise pollution. I've studied it a bit. I just took a law class this past semester, and we looked at some ordinances. They mostly affected like birds. We looked at it affecting like animals.
Yeah.
So haven't really looked at the people side of it. Yeah.
Interesting. Thomas, any ideas on this?
Yeah, well, being a musician, my kind of gut reaction was like, oh no, because I've thrown my fair share of like backyard shows, had a couple of contentious conversations with police officers about volumes late in the evening. But I was asking around this morning actually at the CROG office here, see if anybody has any experience with noise ordinances. And like I think Maya was saying, they mostly said that usually roosters are what incur calls. Yeah. And so somebody was telling me a story about how a couple years ago they had to spend many mornings outside with one of the little, decibel meters, waiting for roosters to make noise, which I thought was kind of interesting.
That's fascinating. In a generous concept of this idea, if you're trying to control the noise of trucks or power plants or, I don't know, something of that nature within the municipality, when you're telling people they can't have roosters, I wonder if that has, or they have to keep them quiet. How do you muzzle a rooster? I wonder if that has other implications, lifestyle implications. I don't know. Anyway, I am fascinated to see what you guys come up with this summer on this. I know that I think it was the reason why you're pursuing this. It was actually specifically requested by WestCOG. So Maya, you might have a connection. Yeah, you might be ahead of the line figuring out what they're planning to do and what they need, what information they're looking to get on this. But it should be interesting. The other thing, lastly, we're going to wrap up soon, but I wanted to know how long you guys have been in Connecticut. Everybody, your families are from Connecticut? Are you, I know, Maya, you said you kind of moved around a lot. So have you been in Connecticut long, or have you been here your entire, tell me, how long you been here?
I was born in Connecticut. I lived in Salem, Connecticut, moved from New London, New Haven,
Wow.
And Milford.
Yeah,
and then I moved to California in 8th grade, and I've just moved back for college.
Okay. So your family's still out in California?
I have a lot of families actually in New York. Only my mom and I are in Connecticut right now.
Okay. All right. Anne, how about you? You come to Connecticut soon, late?
Yeah, so I was born in China, but I only lived there for like 8 months of my life because I was adopted as like a baby.
Oh, okay.
And then I lived in the Midwest for maybe like 3 years, but for the most part, I've been from Connecticut. Like majority of my life, I went from to kindergarten up to like now even college because I'm going to UConn.
Yeah.
I've lived in Connecticut, but I still haven't. Like I did the town guesser game earlier today,
Yeah.
and I got like 10 of them right, and it was only the town. It wasn't even the towns next to my like Glastonbury. It was like just it was like random towns I just guessed on. I was like, all right, perfect. Like
I bet you did. I probably did a hell of a lot better than I would do. That's for sure. I mean, yeah. There are small towns in Connecticut that you don't, I still haven't heard of some of them just popping up. Wow, I've never even heard of that town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thomas, how long you been here?
I was born in New Britain General Hospital.
New Britain, yeah.
Hard hitting. So since the very beginning.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I was born in Jersey, so we moved here when I was like 14. I was in high school, which really sucked. Of course, you don't want to move when you're in high school. But by the time I graduated, I was so thankful I had left Jersey. And it was really good to be in Connecticut, and still is. People are wonderful. People I work with are wonderful. So it does make me a little bit more optimistic than I might otherwise have been had I stayed at Exit 8 on the Turnpike in the Garden State. So, all right, we are out of time, and I want to thank you very much for doing this. It's been a lot of fun. I wish you guys, the best for the summer. I think you're going to have a blast. You get together, you do all this stuff, not just in your COGs, but together as a group, and you meet up occasionally, and you have some fun things to do. So, enjoy it, because it's going to go by very fast. Suddenly it's back to school again real soon. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Yeah, it was really fun.
You are welcome. We hope you've enjoyed today's edition of The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. As always, this program is recorded, produced, and copyrighted, by Sustainable CT. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, the Connecticut Green Bank. Thanks to our guests, Sustainable CT Fellows Anna Hilary, Maya Aviles, and Thomas Busemeyer. Keep up the great work, all three of you, and thanks to everyone for taking local actions that have a statewide impact.